Next up, I said yesterday that I was going to talk today a little bit more about feedback, because obviously there's a lot of feedback happening in this room. And I think one of the most important things, it's interesting that nobody mentioned this in the testimonials. I think a very important thing that I hope you will learn this year is how to deal with feedback on many different levels, because you're going to get a lot of it in your life. And as I said yesterday, nobody likes getting it, but if you can get yourself past the little wounding of pride that happens when somebody doesn't love everything you've written, then you can really, really benefit from feedback. You're going to be getting feedback from me, you're going to be getting feedback from your peers, you're going to be getting feedback from our feedback guest, and that's just the way it works. And some of it will be contradictory. One of the number one things that I would recommend to you for the rest of your lives, whenever you're in any situation where you're getting feedback, always remember, you do not need to respond to that feedback in real time. And in fact, it's better if you don't. It's better if you just take it in. Smile, nod, take notes, and say thank you. Because it's your business and your team's business to decide what feedback is going to be useful to you and what feedback you're going to employ and how you're going to do it. You don't owe an explanation for that to anybody or a defense, and not to me even. And I know sometimes people feel like they need to defend and say, well, the reason I decided was because, and I'm like, it doesn't matter to me. People who give feedback, if they're giving it in a truly constructive and honest way, they're giving it to try and help you make your piece better. They're just giving you ideas and thoughts. They're not giving you directives and rules to follow. And so you get to decide. You shouldn't defend it. So I would say the first thing to do, and also another part of it is, sometimes the feedback doesn't really make sense to you until you've had time to sort of percolate it a little bit. So something that in the room sounds interesting might, when you think about it, isn't going to work, or something that you say, oh, absolutely not. A week later, you might wake up in the middle of the night and go, oh my God, actually that would make this happen. But it might take you a while to figure that out. So never feel like, and the other thing is you're on a team. So you shouldn't be trying to respond to feedback until you know how your team is responding to the feedback. So the number one thing, what that means a lot in this room is that there's a lot of feedback and then a lot of silence because people don't respond to the feedback. But I think that's a smart way to do it. If you have an honest question because you don't understand the feedback and you want clarity, that's perfectly all right. But in fact, this is a little silly, and I don't use these too much, but I made these years ago. These are my 3 rules for feedback in the room. This one says, if you disagree, don't defend. So if someone's giving you feedback and you disagree with it, you can still smile and nod and say thank you. You don't need to defend because you know you're not going to implement it, and that's your right. So just say thank you. And you'll find the feedback session goes a lot more quickly then too. Because if you defend yourself, then the person is liable to start arguing with you, and it's a terrible thing. If we misunderstand, don't explain. What this one means is, if I say, well, he wouldn't kill her because he knows that she's his mother, and so you might say, no. Actually, he knows that she's not his mother because, and you try to give me a bunch of reasons. And those reasons might be very valid. They might be something that was very clearly in a previous scene and I dozed off or something and I didn't hear it. And so you may be absolutely right, or it may be something that you haven't yet put in your story. But the most important thing to remember is if someone is asking you a question, it means that in the moment that it happened, they didn't understand it. That's all the information you need. Then you just need to look back at your story and go, why didn't they understand that? Were they asleep? Okay, then we can ignore that. Or is there something we could have done to make sure they wouldn't have missed it? So you don't need to explain to me in the room what I misunderstood, because that's not useful. You need to figure out how can you make your script not cause that question to come up again for an audience member in the future. Because you don't get to walk out on stage and explain to your audience. So, and then the third one, this was a fun one. If you agree, don't rewrite yet. This is the other side of the coin. Someone will say, well, it might be cool if he didn't, shoot her at this and did that later. And you might go, oh, that's awesome. Okay, because then if we did that, then we could. And you see people start to actually rewrite the show right there in the feedback session. And usually when I see that happening, I say, slow down, stop. First of all, you have to check in with your team. And second of all, sit on it for a few days, because any change you make, it's like a house of cards when you're putting a plot together. So any change you make is going to have a lot of ramifications. So when you are contemplating a change, you're going to need to think that through. And it may be that no matter how exciting it sounded, it's not going to work because of something that you figure out later on. Or you might have to implement it a different way. So those are the things that I would recommend to you in terms of accepting feedback, not just in this room, but anywhere in the world, and maybe even more so outside of this room, where in this room I like to think that people are all here to support you and help you make your show better. But that's not always the case with the feedback you get out there in the world. Sometimes people are trying to show off, or they're trying to put you down because they're jealous, or who knows what. And that's why out there it's even more important. Just smile and nod and say thank you. And the stuff that works, use it, and the stuff that doesn't, throw it away. Now, the next step of that, though, is once your team gets together, if you found that there's some feedback that really resonates with you, and there's a question that somebody asked that the whole team goes, oh man, yeah, I can see why people would be confused at that moment in the show. We need to figure that out. I usually say that I think there are 3 main different ways to deal with a question like that when the team has decided it needs to be dealt with. One is to explain it. So that means put in more verbiage and more story in order to make it clear. That, to me, it's doable, but it's the least elegant way to do it because it involves more exposition and more explanation, and it's cerebral, and it works, but it's not the best choice. The next one is to eliminate the question. In other words, back up a few scenes and have something happen so that by the time we get to that moment, that question won't even happen. I think that's the best way to do it, because then you're not bogging yourself down with exposition and explanation, but you are preparing the audience to understand things as it goes along. You're planting the seeds that you need along the way. The third one is sort of a fun one. I call it acknowledgement. Sometimes, especially in a comedy, it's enough to simply acknowledge that there is a question. And you'll find, interestingly, I think, that an audience, if someone on the stage asks the question that is in your brain, it doesn't even matter what the answer is or if there is an answer. Just the fact that somebody questioned it makes you calm down and go, okay, someone else thought that was weird too. I'm not the only one. So if you say, well, why would he come in the window when he just could have come in the door? And you're sitting in the audience thinking that. So if a character on stage goes, wait a minute, why did you come in the window when you could have come in the door? It doesn't matter what the other person answers. It really doesn't. It could be ludicrous. They could sidestep it and not answer. I'll tell you later. It doesn't really matter. So you can employ that for comic effect, but you can also employ it in moments where you really don't have a good answer for the question, but you'd like to get rid of it. So sometimes it's a really good way to just get rid of a question that's sort of niggly and it's bothering you, but it's not important enough to waste time trying to set it up or deal with it. Just acknowledge it and move on. So those are the things that I would talk about, and we will talk about all those things as we go along as you're presenting work as well. And then I said, when you are giving, if you're a person who's giving feedback in the room, I talked about this a bit yesterday, make sure that it's always really clear that you're stating your opinion, not something that is somehow a truth, because it's your opinion, no matter how much truth may be in it. And same with me. When I say things to you, I am telling you my opinion or my thoughts. You don't have to agree with me. I don't expect you to always agree with me. What I hope is that it will make you think harder about what you're doing, but not that you'll just do what people are telling you to do. Okay,